Welcome back to the final episode of Let's Argue, the series where you, the viewer, send in your hot takes to me and then I react to them. If you're curious why I'm ending the series, then go to my community post and read all about the specifics of it. But if you want the quick answer, it's that, frankly, I'm just not as passionate about this series anymore. I'd rather put my time and energy into the retrospectives and streaming, and there are other aspects to it as well. Again, read the community post if you want all the specifics. But with all that out of the way, let's get into it. This is the final episode of Let's Argue. The MonsterVerse ruined Mechagodzilla to a core, that bringing him back in the future is not a viable option, even if they make a Kiryu out of him. That Mecha had the potential of it was given a large screen time instead of 6 minutes of the third act, and he was just used to giving King Kong some moment to fuel his character ego after losing to Godzilla. Had the MonsterVerse taken Mechagodzilla seriously, they would have repeated the tale of AI going rogue, where Mecha starts doing good to human, only for its AI to go rogue and cause destruction, and Godzilla and King Kong are seriously wounded defeating him, but no, instead he's a toy to a terrible rich guy villain who tries to be a hero for the people. This Mecha not only ruined the movie, but also, pushed me away from the Godzilla franchise for a long time. What? I don't think it's that big of a deal. I don't think that the MonsterVerse ruined Mechagodzilla, as this is just one iteration of a lot of iterations of the character. I'm okay with how they used Mechagodzilla. It's not that big of a deal since, he doesn't just show up in the last 5 minutes. We do see him earlier in the movie as he rips that Skullcrawler in half with his, laser. He's been kind of built up towards throughout the entire movie, and arguably that's what the entire movie is about. Remember when Godzilla destroys Pensacola? He's going after the Mechagodzilla piece that they have there at the Apex facility. That's sort of the entire crux of that movie, is Mechagodzilla being built up to. So, hard disagree. I guess if you wanted a Kiryu type of story, maybe you could be disappointed by that, but I think it's wrong to go to a movie, hope to see one thing, and then hate it because you didn't get that specific story. On top of that, too, we already have 2 great Kiryu movies, and it's Godzilla against Mechagodzilla and Godzilla Tokyo SOS. We don't need another type of Kiryu saga. We just don't, because we already got what, in my opinion, is a masterpiece. Mechagodzilla in the MonsterVerse served his narrative purpose really well, and that is to act as a force to battle and ultimately unite Godzilla and King Kong, and that's what happened. So, hard disagree. That's a very big overreaction, in my opinion. So maybe not so hot of a take, but I think that the current state of the MonsterVerse is fine. I won't deny that there are places they can improve, such as the human stuff, but I think the direction they chose is really inspired and needs to be appreciated, since we haven't really seen pure monster fun since Showa, and it's clear they're having a good time, even the human actors. I know Millennium and Heisei were goofy, sometimes, but it's not all the same vibe. I agree with your first part. I think that the MonsterVerse is okay with where it's heading. There's a lot of doomers that are like, oh my god, it's the end of the world, and the MonsterVerse is gonna die, and it's all over, and it's over, guys, it's over. Guys, it's over! Oh my god! Kong Road Godzilla! It's the end of the fucking world! Oh my god! I think it's hard to kind of track it and be like, ooh, this is really where it's gonna start going downhill, because we're not going to know for another 3 years what the next movie is even going to be like. Is it going to be dark? Is it going to be serious? Is it going to be goofy and funny? We don't know. We have no idea what Grant Spator is even cooking right now. So that's why it's kind of let's just take a big step back and just relax for a bit. Godzilla Final Wars is the only Toho Godzilla movie that has a plot that makes sense. I don't think so. I think you might be saying that because of how much they just keep saying what the plot of the movie is over and over again. I think X says in that movie, humans are all cattle. I think he says that 15 times. The plot is just constantly being restated to the audience. Okay, we got to stop the aliens because humans are cattle to them. And if we don't stop them, it's because humans are cattle to the aliens. I get it. Guys, I get it. I think -1 is more straightforward. I think that the original 54 Godzilla movie is more straightforward. I think most plots are very straightforward. Mothra versus Godzilla. Oh, it follows this egg that washes up on shore. The journalist is the main character. This greedy businessman tries to buy the egg. Egg hatches. Chaos ensues. Most plots are very straightforward. We're not getting primer level, insane plots where it's Tenet level stuff. Most 99% of Godzilla movies are very easy to follow. So much so that like the Showa ones were outright made for kids later down the road. Like, you're telling me that Godzilla's Revenge doesn't make sense and isn't easy to follow? There needs to be another Cloverfield figure. I agree. The fact they only made one Cloverfield figure and it was like a rare collector's item, I get why they did it, because money, but like you can make more money if you print more of the thing. And so, come on, let's see a Bandai Movie Monster series Clover. Like that'd be sick. I think everyone wants that. Since you're using a capture from that movie, the community post used a picture of Godzilla 1967, I think Son of Godzilla would have been less hated if it wasn't for the weird Godzilla suit used in the movie. My proof? The reshot and newly shot sequences with Minya and the Destroy All Monsters suit in Godzilla's Revenge are held up as that movie's high points. If Godzilla looked more normal in Son of Godzilla, I think people would have taken to Minya more quickly. Maybe. I think a lot of it just has to do with the fact that it's such a huge detour for Godzilla, where it's like, he was just fighting a three-headed dragon from space, and it's like, now he's a dad. Like, I get how that was kind of like a bit of a 180 for a lot of people, that it's not really their thing. I get that. The suit is bad, though. That is one of the worst suits. I think I'm going to say it. It's the worst suit in the series. Dinosaur 2000 is the best CG animated movie from Disney. I disagree. I like Meet the Robinsons more. Dinosaur, I barely remember, and I remember being scared shitless by the ride at Disney, but like beyond that, Meet the Robinsons just does it for me. The elements of family, it's just such a heartwarming story. I just adore Meet the Robinsons. The design for Godzilla 1973 through 1975 is the best Godzilla design for the Showa era. His appearance shows anger to scare away threats and evil, and at the same time, he looks kind to make people safe. Yeah, I see where you're coming from. My personal favorite is 1968 Godzilla, the one from Destroy All Monsters all the way up until, I think, Godzilla vs. Gigan. I love how that suit looks. I love how he almost looks kind of like a bulldog in a way. It really, really works with that same kind of vibe that you're talking about, where he looks threatening enough to fight monsters, but he still looks kind of kid-friendly and, like generally safe to be around. I think both really kind of help in that regard. I like 68 just a little bit more than 73, but to each their own. I think 73 to 75 is like that close kind of like second for me, especially in the Showa era. Godzilla Final Wars had one of the best suits in the series because of how vicious Godzilla looks. It exudes this fierce predatory energy with the menacing teeth, the piercing eyes. It truly makes him look like an apex predator. I agree. I love how slim it looks. I love just how it really feels like he could actually fight these monsters, and he's built for it. I think what I like the most are like the little like cat ears and like the fangs. I like how cat-like it looks. It really helps with that apex predator vibe that they're trying to put off. I agree 100%. The Millennium era Toho films, Godzilla 2000 to Godzilla Final Wars, all stand well on their own, and the Millennium era in general is extremely underrated. I think a lot of that underratedness kind of comes from the fact that it's not as interconnected as the Heisei era, which a lot of people really loved. And so they kind of write it off, since, the Kiryu stuff is all in its own continuity. GMK is kind of in its own continuity, with 98 being thrown in there and a couple others. And 2000 and Mechagodzilla kind of appear at first to be connected, but they're actually not. And Final Wars, that timeline is just insane that I don't even want to talk about right now. Regardless, I agree. A lot of these are great self-contained Godzilla stories that manage to blend practical effects with CGI in a really solid way, especially for the year that it was, which was the early 2000s. The way the Kaiju fandom, and more specifically MonsterVerse fans, treat Gamera really bothers me. He literally can't stand on his own. He always needs to be related to or tie back to Godzilla and crossover with the MonsterVerse in some way to reach his fullest potential, according to the fandom. He already reached that peak with the Heisei trilogy. He does not need Godzilla to be relevant. I agree 100%. I think it's weird that whenever a monster is talked about just in a vacuum, you immediately get MonsterVerse fans that say, they need to be in the MonsterVerse, they need to be in the MonsterVerse. And it's like, they were fine existing as is. And I say that as someone that likes to see legacy monsters in the MonsterVerse. Like, I like that Ghidorah and Rodan and Mothra are in there. But it's just bizarre to me how people are like, Gamera needs to be in the MonsterVerse to be relevant. It just seems like you don't actually watch any of the Gamera movies, and you're saying that so you can have a reason to watch Gamera in something. The Gamera Heisei trilogy blows the MonsterVerse out of the water. I think those 3 movies are the greatest kaiju movies ever made. I'll make a video on them eventually. I agree with this person 100%. I think that, yes, Gamera is not this like Make-A-Wish monster. I just wish that people would lay off and let Gamera just exist as his own thing. And I wish that more people would actually give Gamera a chance, since it just kind of seems like no one really watches Gamera and they only view him as like a turtle version of Godzilla. People who say Godzilla 1998 is a good giant monster movie but not a good Godzilla movie are either defending it for sentimental / nostalgia reasons or just playing devil's advocate. It's literally the one live action film in the entire franchise I can't come back to and find something to like about. That take of it's a good monster movie but a bad Godzilla movie is one of the most kind of overplayed statements about that movie. I've heard it so many times. I'm pretty sure I've even said it a few times. My main gripe with Godzilla 1998 is that the first act is phenomenal. Those first 30 minutes are some of the best first 30 minutes in any monster movie ever. It is so well executed, it is so suspenseful, the way everything builds. It just feels so massive. It feels Hollywood, but in a right way. It feels like this would have been the perfect treatment that Godzilla deserved. It wasn't until we actually see him and he, almost steps on the character of Animal that it's like, oh, that's right, this is one of the worst Godzilla movies in the franchise entire history. So I understand what you mean. Personally, I love how it starts. I just feel that it completely nosedives at a certain point in the movie. I also think there's a lot of nostalgia behind Godzilla 1998. I mean, shit, in my video, I literally hold up the VHS tape and say, this is the VHS tape that I grew up watching this movie on. So it reminds me a lot of like the Star Wars prequels, how those were hated when they first came out. And then now that people that grew up with those movies are now grown-ups, they can actually defend them and make points about them. A lot of that is guided by nostalgia. But look at like Revenge of the Sith, how the reception behind that has completely changed, and now it's considered to be one of the best Star Wars movies. I think a lot of these defenses that people have been making towards Godzilla 1998, myself included, stem from nostalgia, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I do think if you are going to defend it and it's because of nostalgia, you gotta kind of be open about that. You gotta just say, look, I'm nostalgic about this. Here's why I love it. And that's fine. That's valid. If you like it, perfectly fine. But I do agree with this post. I think there's a lot to not like about that movie. All right, that about wraps everything up. I just wanted to say thank you so much for all of your submissions. Again, I'm sorry, but this is the very last Let's Argue of the entire channel. Like, I'm done with this series. It's over. So anyways, I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. Expect to see more retrospectives on the channel since I'll be putting more energy into those videos. I'm Cole McCormick. You're watching Firewood Media. Peace out.